The morning started like any other in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council. Ships from 47 worlds had sent their best people to meet and talk about the future of their galaxy. The huge room buzzed with voices speaking in dozens of different languages. Tall beings with crystal skins sat next to small furry creatures. Flying aliens with wings like glass floated above chairs made for beings with tentacles instead of legs. Ambassador Kaleri from the bird-like Zephyrian people looked at her notes one more time. Today was important. Humans were supposed to present their yearly report about how much money and how many ships they would give to protect the galaxy. Jake Harrison, the human commander, always gave these talks. He was known for being direct and honest, even when other council members did not like what he had to say. But Jake was not there. Kel, Ari looked at the empty seats where the human group always sat. The nameplate reading Terran Federation sat, alone on the curved table. She had never seen those seats empty before. In all her years on the council, the humans had never missed a meeting. "Where are they?" whispered Ambassador Thyra, a tall being that looked like a giant walking insect. Her forearms moved nervously as she spoke. "The humans are never late." Chairman Vextel stood up from his place at the center of the great table. His body was made of living crystal that normally glowed with bright colors when he was happy or excited. Today the crystal looked dull and gray. He was worried. "I call this meeting to order." His voice boomed across the hall. "We will begin with the Terran Federation's defense presentation." Silence filled the room. The empty human seats seemed to stare back at everyone. Vextel waited for a full minute, then tried again. "Commander Harrison, please present your report." Still nothing. A small beeping sound came from the communication panel. The council's main computer had received a message. Vextel pressed a button, and a flat, emotionless voice filled the hall. "The Terran Federation withdraws from all galactic agreements, starting now. Do not try to contact us." That was it. No explanation, no goodbye. Just a simple message that changed everything. The hall exploded into noise. 46 different species. All started talking at once. Some shouted in anger. Others asked questions that no one could answer. The translators worked as fast as they could, but even they could not keep up with all the different voices. "This is not possible," said Dr. Neela, a blue-skinned woman from Batazed. "Think humans have contracts. They have promises to keep. Cannot just leave." "Maybe it is a mistake," suggested Zorlix, whose robot body clicked in word as he spoke. "Perhaps their computers are broken." But deep down, everyone knew this was not a mistake. The message was too clear to final. Ambassador Thyra stood up, her insect-like head turning to look at each council member. "We must contact their colonies, their ships. Someone must know what is happening." Vextel nodded and pressed more buttons. On his control panel, images appeared in the air above the table, showing different parts of space where humans lived and worked. The first image showed the Titan mining station. It was a huge metal structure that floated in space, pulling valuable metals from asteroids. Hundreds of humans worked there alongside aliens from other worlds. But the image showed an empty station. No ships, no people. It's just dark metal floating in space. The second image was worse. New Washington, a human colony on the edge of known space, was completely dark. The city that had housed 2 million people showed no lights, no movement, no signs of life. One by one, the images told the same story. Every human colony was empty. Every human ship was gone. Every human worker had disappeared. "This is impossible," said Admiral Kethver, a large lizard-like being whose scales turned red when he was angry. "You cannot move millions of people without someone noticing. Where are their ships?
Ow.
Where did they go?" The questions kept coming, but no one had answers. Lisa Carter had been the human cultural expert who spent her time visiting different worlds and learning about alien customs. She was supposed to be on Centauri Prime, helping to plan a festival that would bring different species together. The Centaurians called her office, but got no answer. When they went to her apartment, they found it empty. Her clothes were gone. Her books were gone. Even her plants were gone. The building's security cameras showed Lisa calmly packing her things into boxes. She smiled and waved at her alien neighbors as she loaded everything into a small ship. The ship's markings were covered with black paint, making it impossible to tell where it came from. Within an hour of her packing, the ship had jumped to hyperspace and vanished. As the day went on, more reports came in. Every single human in the galaxy had done the same thing. They had packed their belongings, said polite goodbyes, and left. No one had argued. No one had seemed upset. They had all acted like they were simply going home after a long trip. The strangest part was how organized it all seemed. The humans had not just run away, they had carefully planned their departure. At the joint military bases where humans and aliens worked together, the human soldiers had finished all their reports before leaving. They had handed over their duties to alien officers. They had even left detailed notes about ongoing projects at the hospital on Rigel 7. Human doctors had worked extra shifts to make sure all their patients were stable before other doctors could take over. Dr. Ryan Collins, the chief surgeon, had performed 3 life-saving operations on the day he left, his alien colleagues said. He seemed calm and professional, just like always. But that night, he was gone. The most confusing part was that no one had seen this coming. The humans had seemed happy. They had been making plans for the future. Commander Jake Harrison had been scheduled to speak at a conference next month about new ship designs. Ambassador Kate Wilson had been working on a trade agreement with the Crystalline Union. Teacher, Ari Lopez, had been planning lessons for her. Mixed species classroom on Europa Station, but they were all gone. As the emergency council session continued into the night, one thing became clear. The humans had not left in anger or fear, had left with purpose. Someone had planned this carefully, and every human had agreed to follow the plan. The question that no one could answer was why. What had made an entire species decide to abandon the galaxy they had helped to protect and build? What had happened to make them leave without even trying to explain? Chairman Vexelel looked around the great hall at the worried faces of the remaining council members. For the first time in his long life, he felt truly afraid. The humans had been part of the Galactic Council for over 50 years. They had fought in wars, built colonies, and made friends across the galaxy. Now they were gone. And no one knew where they had gone, or if they would ever come back. The empty seats where the human delegation used to sit seemed to mock the remaining council members. Those seats represented more than just one species among many. They represented the people who had always been ready to help, ready to fight, ready to sacrifice for the greater good of the galaxy, and now. For the first time in decades, the galaxy would have to face its problems without them. 3 months had passed since the humans disappeared. The Galactic Council had expected them to return by now. Many council members believed the humans had simply needed time to solve some internal problem. They thought humanity would send a message explaining everything, asking to rejoin the galactic community. They were wrong. The Great Council Hall looked different now. The empty human seats had become a constant reminder of what was missing. Some council members had suggested removing the nameplate that said Terran Federation, but Chairman Vexel refused. He still hoped the humans would come back. Today's meeting was different from the usual discussions about trade and politics. Today they were talking about survival. Admiral Kethver stood at the front of the room, his red scales looking darker than usual. His voice was heavy with bad news. "The Outer Rim is falling," he announced. "We have lost 14 star systems to the Void Swarm in the past month." The room became completely quiet. The Void Swarm was the nightmare that kept every galactic leader awake at night. They were insects the size of starships, traveling in huge groups that ate everything in their path. They destroyed planets, consumed space stations, and turned entire solar systems into empty darkness. For 50 years, the combined forces of the Galactic Council had kept the Void Swarm away from civilized space. Different species took turns patrolling the dangerous border regions. They shared technology and battle plans. They helped each other repair damaged ships and train new soldiers. But the humans had always been at the front of those battles.
How
many ships do we have left at the Outer Rim? Asked Ambassador Thyra, her forearms fidgeting nervously. Admiral Kethfer looked at his notes. 47 ships from all Council species combined. Before the humans left, we had 230 ships protecting that region. The numbers were terrifying. Council had not realized how many human ships had been guarding the edge of known space. While other species sent their older vessels and smaller crews to patrol duty, the humans had sent their best ships and most experienced captains. Dr. Neela stood up from her seat. As the Council's chief scientist, she had spent the last 3 months studying battle records and war reports from the past 50 years, which she had found was disturbing. I have reviewed every major battle we have fought, she said, her blue skin pale with worry. In almost 8 out of every 10 fights, human forces made the difference between victory and defeat. She pressed a button, and images appeared in the air above the council table. The first image showed the Battle of Kepler Station, where a small human fleet had held off a massive void swarm attack until reinforcements arrived. The second image showed the siege of Vega Colony, where human soldiers had fought for 6 days straight to save 2 million alien civilians. Look at these casualty reports, Dr. Neela continued. Humans always took the most dangerous missions. When we needed someone to scout enemy positions, we sent humans. We needed someone to hold a position against impossible odds, we sent humans. When we needed someone to volunteer for missions that might not have survivors, humans always raised their hands first. The images kept changing, showing battle after battle where human courage had saved the day. But it was not just courage that made the difference. The humans fought differently than other species. Their tactics made no sense to us, admitted General Quex. Tall gray alien whose people were known for their logical thinking. Humans would attack when they should retreat. They would take risks that our computers said were foolish. But somehow, their crazy plans always worked. Ambassador Kolari had been quiet during most of the meeting, but now she spoke up. I remember the Battle of Wolf. 359. Our battle computers calculated that we had a 12% chance of victory. The logical choice was to retreat and find a better position. But Commander Jake Harrison ignored our advice, said his ships would attack the enemy head-on while our forces flanked from the sides. Our computers said it was suicide. She paused, remembering. The human ships took terrible damage. Half of their fleet was destroyed, but their sacrifice gave us the opening we needed. We won a battle that should have been impossible to win. Stories continued. Species after species shared memories of human bravery and sacrifice. But as they talked, a troubling pattern began to emerge. Trade Commissioner Yalasan presented his own disturbing report. Human merchants carried almost half of all cargo between star systems. They were the only ones willing to fly through dangerous space routes that other species avoided. He showed maps of trade routes throughout the galaxy. Red lines marked the paths that were considered too risky for normal commercial traffic. These routes went through areas with space storms, pirate attacks, and gravitational dangers that could destroy a ship. Every single red route was serviced by human cargo ships, Yalasan explained. They delivered medicine to plague worlds that other species were afraid to visit. They brought food to colonies that were under attack. They carried supplies through war zones when everyone else refused. The economic impact was already becoming clear. Without human cargo ships, entire regions were running out of essential supplies. Colonies on the frontier were reporting shortages of food and medicine. Some worlds were completely cut off from the rest of the galaxy. Tech Priest Zorlix rolled forward on his mechanical wheels. His robot body made clicking sounds as he processed information faster than organic minds could think. The humans solved engineering problems that we could not solve, he announced in his electronic voice. Their approach to technology was different from ours. Where we used mathematics and careful calculations, they used something they called intuition. They would look at a broken machine and somehow know exactly what was wrong with it. It could repair systems that our best engineers could not understand. Zorlix displayed holographic images of various construction projects throughout the galaxy. Space stations, planetary defense systems, and terraforming equipment all showed signs of human engineering modifications. Division 7 major infrastructure. Projects have already failed without human technical support, he continued. The atmospheric processors on New Titan have shut down. The orbital elevators on Rigel Prime are showing stress fractures. The deep space communication array in the Vega system has gone offline. As the reports piled up, the council members began to realize something horrible. They had not been partners with humanity. They had been dependent on humanity. The humans had quietly become the backbone of galactic civilization. While other species focused on their own interests and safety, humans had taken on the dangerous jobs, the difficult missions, the thankless tasks that kept everyone else safe and comfortable. "How did we not see this?" asked Ambassador Thera. Her voice filled with shame. Chairman Vextel's crystal body flickered with dim, sad colors. "We saw what we wanted to see. We told ourselves that humans were naturally good at fighting because they came from a violent world. We convinced ourselves that they enjoyed taking risks because they were too primitive to understand fear. Believe they volunteered for dangerous missions because they were too stupid to know better. The truth was much worse than ignorance. The Council had built their entire civilization on the assumption that humans would always be there to handle the problems that other species did not want to face." Dr. Neela pulled up one final chart. It showed the distribution of casualties in galactic conflicts over the past 50 years. The numbers were shocking. Humans, who made up only 3% of the galactic population, had suffered 28% of all military deaths. "They died for us," she said quietly. "Over and over again, they died for us, and we never even thanked them properly." The meeting ended in silence. 46 species sat in their chairs, finally understanding what they had lost. The humans had not just left the Galactic Council, they had taken with them the courage, the sacrifice, the determination that had held the galaxy together. Now, as reports came in of more worlds falling to the Void Swarm as trade routes collapsed and infrastructure failed, the remaining council members faced a terrifying reality. Without the humans, they were not sure they could survive. 6 months after the humans vanished, Chairman Vextel made a decision that would cost the Galactic Council more money and resources than any project in their history. He authorized the largest search operation the galaxy had ever seen. Every member species contributed their fastest ships, their best pilots, and their most advanced scanning equipment. The mission was simple: find the humans and bring them back. The galaxy was falling apart without them, and everyone knew it. Captain Zara of the Centaurian Navy led the main search fleet. The Starfinder was equipped with the most powerful sensors available. She could detect the heat signature of a single person from 3 star systems away. If the humans were hiding somewhere in known space, she would find them. But the search teams found something strange. The humans had not just disappeared. They had erased almost every trace of their existence. The first search team visited Earth's former colonies. These worlds had been home to millions of humans for decades. The searchers expected to find abandoned cities, empty buildings, and forgotten belongings. Instead, they found worlds that looked like no one had ever lived there at all. "It is impossible," reported Captain Zara during her first communication back to the Council. "New Boston Colony housed 3 million people. There should be ruins, garbage, something to show they were here. But the land looks completely natural. Even the roads are gone." The search teams investigated further. They used ground-penetrating scanners to look beneath the surface of abandoned human worlds. They found nothing. No buried foundations. Underground pipes or cables, no trash dumps or industrial waste. It was as if someone had carefully removed every sign that humans had ever lived on these planets. The space stations told a similar story. Humans had helped build dozens of orbital facilities throughout the galaxy. These massive structures required years to construct and contained millions of tons of metal, equipment, and supplies. But when the search teams arrived, they found empty. A space where the stations should have been, security footage from nearby systems showed what had happened. In the days before their disappearance, human work crews had systematically dismantled every structure they had helped create. They worked around the clock, carefully taking apart space stations piece by piece. Massive cargo ships carried away every bolt, every wire, every computer chip. But where had they taken everything? The answer came from an unexpected source. Captain Roy Bennett had been the last human military officer to maintain regular contact with Galactic Defense Networks. His personal quarters on the command station at Wolf 359 had been searched many times. But investigators finally found his hidden personal logs. Roy had been keeping a private diary for years. His entries told a story that the Council had never heard before. They revealed how humans really felt about their role in galactic society. The earliest entries were hopeful. Roy wrote about his excitement at working with alien species, learning about different cultures, and helping to build a peaceful galaxy. He believed that humans and aliens could be true partners. But as the years passed, his tone changed. Another day, another impossible mission, Roy wrote 3 years earlier. Command wants us to scout the Maelstrom Nebula. Radiation levels will cook our ships in 6 hours. The Draconian Navy says it is too dangerous for their crews. The Crystalline Union claims their equipment cannot handle the electromagnetic storms. So guess who gets to volunteer? The diary entries painted a picture of gradual disappointment and growing anger. Roy described mission after mission where humans were asked to take risks that other species refused. He wrote about diplomatic meetings where human representatives were ignored or dismissed. He recorded conversations with alien officers who spoke about humans like they were useful tools rather than intelligent beings. They call us brave, Roy wrote in an entry from last year. They say we are noble warriors who choose to sacrifice ourselves for the greater good. The truth is, we never had a choice. Every time there is a dirty job to do, they look at us. Every time someone needs to die for the cause, they expect us to volunteer. The most revealing entry was dated just 1 week before the human exodus. Roy had attended a private meeting of alien military commanders. They thought no humans were listening, but Roy had been working late in an adjacent office. I heard them talking tonight. He wrote, Admiral Kethfer was complaining about human casualty rates. Not because he felt sorry for our dead soldiers, but because training replacements was expensive. General Queck suggested that humans should have larger families to provide more soldiers for dangerous missions. Ambassador Thyra wondered if they could find another species that was as expendable as humans, but less emotionally difficult to manage. The diary's final entry was brief. They still do not understand. After all this time, they still see us as the barbarians who got lucky. But we are not barbarians, and our luck has run out. It's time to find a better way. The search teams used Roy's logs to track human movements in the weeks before the Exodus. They followed hyperspace trails and investigated fuel depot records. The evidence pointed toward the galactic rim, the unexplored edge of known space, where few ships dared to travel. A breakthrough came when Trader Guild merchant Quill discovered something unusual during a routine cargo run. His ship's sensors detected a small probe drifting in the neutral zone, the buffer area between Council space and the unknown regions beyond. The probe was definitely human technology, but it was broadcasting on frequencies that no one had seen before. The message was short and repeated every 6 hours in all human languages. We have found a new home. Do not seek us. We will not return. The probe's trajectory showed it had come from beyond the galactic rim. Council scientists calculated its path and determined that it had been launched from a point roughly 50 light-years outside mapped space. That was farther than any exploring ship had ever traveled. Chairman Vextel authorized an immediate pursuit mission. The fastest ships from 12 different species formed a pursuit fleet under Captain Czar's command. They followed the probe's path toward the edge of known space. Pushing their engines to maximum speed, what they found at the galactic rim shocked everyone. A massive sensor jamming field extended across several light years of space. It was like running into an invisible wall. Ship sensors went crazy, navigation computers failed, and communication systems stopped working. The jamming was so complete that ships could barely detect each other even when flying side by side. But the jamming field was not natural. It had been created using technology that was more advanced than anything the Council had ever seen. The energy patterns were consistent with human power systems, but amplified far beyond what human ships should have been capable of producing, Captain. Zara ordered her fleet to probe the edges of the jamming field. They found gaps in the coverage, spaces where smaller ships could slip through without being detected. 3 scout vessels managed to penetrate the barrier and continue toward the signal source. What they found on the other side was impossible to believe. The space beyond the jamming field showed clear signs of massive construction projects. Energy signatures indicated industrial activity on a scale that dwarfed anything in Council space. Hyperspace distortions suggested constant traffic by fleets of ships, moving between dozens of different locations, but whenever the scout ships tried to get closer, their instruments failed completely. Something was actively blocking their sensors, preventing them from seeing what the humans had built in the darkness beyond the galaxy's edge. The most disturbing discovery came when the scouts tried to return through the jamming field. They found that the gaps they had used to enter were now sealed. New jamming emitters had appeared, cutting off their escape route. Only emergency beacons dropped by the main fleet allowed them to find their way back to Council space. The message was clear. The humans knew they were being followed, and they did not want to be found. When Captain Zara reported her findings to the Council, the implications were terrifying. The humans had not just run away to hide somewhere in the galaxy. They had traveled beyond the edge of known space and built something enormous out there in the darkness. More importantly, they had developed technology that was far more advanced than anything they had ever shown while part of the galactic community. The humans had been holding back, hiding their true capabilities while serving as the Council's soldiers and workers. The question that haunted every Council member was simple. What else had the humans been hiding, and what were they building? Out there in the dark? 1 year after humanity vanished from the galaxy, something unexpected happened. A beaten-up old cargo ship appeared at the edge of Council space, sending out emergency signals on all frequencies. The ship was called the Lucky Strike. It was definitely human-built. Its hull showed years of wear from traveling through dangerous space. Burn marks from asteroid impacts covered its sides, and its engines were barely working. But it was flying, and someone was alive inside. Council patrol ships surrounded the cargo vessel immediately. For the first time in 12 months, they had found a human. The pilot identified himself as Danny Rodriguez, captain and owner of the Lucky Strike. He was asking for emergency medical help and permission to dock at the nearest station. Chairman Excel personally authorized the request. Within hours, Danny Rodriguez was sitting in a medical bay on Council Station Alpha, getting treatment for radiation poisoning and malnutrition, but more importantly, he was talking. Danny was not what the Council members had expected. He was an older man with gray hair and wrinkled skin that showed decades of hard work in space. His clothes were patched and worn, his hands were calloused from years of manual labor. He looked tired and confused, like someone who had been lost for a very long time. "I missed it," Danny said as Dr. Neela examined his medical condition. "Why?" "Missed the whole damn thing. Was out in deep space when it happened. My communication array got fried by a solar flare 3 months before everyone left. Took me 8 months to fix it with spare parts I had on board." Danny's story was simple but heartbreaking. He had been running supply missions to frontier colonies, carrying medicine and food to settlements that other cargo companies refused to visit. His route took him through dangerous regions where communication was often impossible for weeks at a time. When he finally fixed his radio and tried to contact human colonies for new cargo assignments, he found only silence. Every human world was empty. Every human space station was gone. EVA, the emergency beacons that marked safe hyperspace routes, had been removed. "I thought maybe there was a war," Danny explained. Maybe everyone had evacuated to safer space. I kept looking, kept checking every human settlement I knew about, found nothing but empty planets and abandoned mining stations. It took Danny 3 more months to find the probe that other humans had left behind. The message telling everyone not to look for them was the first sign he had found that his people were still alive somewhere. But Danny had not been part of the evacuation. He had no idea where the other humans had gone, and he had no way to contact them. His old cargo ship did not have the advanced communication equipment needed to reach beyond the galactic rim. Council security officers wanted to question Danny immediately, but Chairman Vextel ordered them to wait. Instead, he arranged for Danny to address the emergency council session in person. It would be the first time in over a year that a human had spoken in the Great Hall. Danny Rodriguez walked into the council chamber wearing his best clothes, which were still just a clean work shirt and old pants. He looked around at the 46 alien species represented in the room. His eyes stopped when he saw the empty seats where the human delegation used to sit. "You want to know why we left?" Danny said, without waiting for formal introductions. His voice was rough from years of breathing recycled air in old spaceships. "I can tell you exactly why we left." Gah. Ambassador Caleri tried to start with diplomatic language. "Captain Rodriguez, we appreciate your willingness to help us understand the situation. Perhaps we could begin with." Danny cut her off. "No, we are going to start with the truth. You people treated us like garbage for 50 years, and now you want to know why we finally had enough." The council chamber became silent. No one had ever spoken to the galactic representatives with such direct anger before. Danny pulled out a small device from his pocket. It was a portable holographic projector, the kind that cargo pilots use to display shipping manifests. Instead of cargo lists, it showed charts and graphs that Danny had put together during his long search for his missing people. "Look at these numbers," Danny said, as the images appeared above the council table. Council voting records for the past 50 years. Every time there was a dangerous mission, who did you vote to send? Every time negotiations failed and you needed someone to fight, who did you call? The first chart showed military casualty rates by species. Humans had suffered 10 times more deaths than any other council member. Despite being one of the smallest populations in the galaxy, every time your perfect theories failed in the real world, who had to clean up the mess? Danny continued. He clicked to the next chart, showing which species were assigned to patrol the most dangerous regions of space. Human ships were responsible for 70% of high-risk assignments. Ambassador. Thera tried to defend the council's decisions. The humans were naturally suited for dangerous tasks. Your psychology, your adaptability, your courage, our expendability, Danny interrupted. That is what you mean. We were your attack dogs, your cleanup crew, your cannon fodder. And when we asked for equal treatment in return, what did we get? He showed more charts. Trade agreements that favored other species. Resource allocations that gave humans the smallest share of galactic wealth. Diplomatic protocols that ranked human representatives below almost every other species. You gave us committees that never met, studies that never finished. Promises that something would be done eventually, but eventually never came, did it? The evidence Danny presented was devastating because it came from the Council's own records. Every vote, every decision, every policy that had shaped the relationship between humans and other species for 5 decades, the pattern was impossible to deny. Danny told them about the Kepler incident, a battle that the Council had recorded as a joint operation with casualties shared equally among all participating species. But Danny had been there, running supplies. To the front lines, he had seen what really happened. The official records say it was a team effort, Danny said, his voice getting quieter, but more intense. The reality is that human ships held the line alone for 3 days while your fleets repositioned to safety. We lost 60 ships and 12,000 people. You lost 3 ships and maybe 100 crew members. But your history books call it a joint victory. Dr. Neela checked the official battle reports on her computer. The numbers Danny cited were accurate, but they had been buried in classified appendices that most council members had never seen. You want another example? Danny asked. The Vega Colony Relief Mission? 2 million civilians trapped on a planet being consumed by plague. The Draconian Navy said the rescue was too risky. The Crystalline Union said they could not spare the ships. The Batazoid Confederation said the radiation levels were too dangerous for their crews. Danny's hand shook as he remembered. So we went alone. 40 human ships flew into a radiation storm that was cooking our crews from the inside out. We saved every single civilian on that planet. And what did we get for it? A thank you note and a request to handle the next impossible mission. The council members were beginning to understand. For 50 years, they had convinced themselves that humans volunteered for dangerous missions because they were brave or noble or naturally suited for combat. The truth was much simpler and much worse. We died for you, Danny said quietly. Over and over, we died for you. Our sons and daughters, our fathers and mothers, our friends and neighbors. They all died protecting people who saw them as useful. Barbarians who were too stupid to know better. Chairman Vextel's crystal body flickered with dim, ashamed colors. Captain Rodriguez, we never intended. Yes, you did, Danny replied. Maybe not at first, but you knew what you were doing. You knew we were taking more than our share of losses. You knew we were getting less than our share of benefits. You knew it, and you decided it was acceptable because it was convenient. Danny turned off his holographic projector and put it back in his pocket. That is why we left. Not because we were angry, though we were. Not because we were hurt, though. We left because we finally realized that you were never going to change. You were never going to treat us as equals. You were always going to see us as the people who did the jobs that you were too good to do yourselves. The council chamber remained silent for a long time after Danny finished speaking. Finally, Ambassador Kalari asked the question that everyone was thinking. Do you know where they went? Can you contact them? Danny shook his head. They left me behind just like they left you, but I can tell you one thing. Whatever they are building, out there beyond the rim, it is something better than this. It has to be, because this was not working for anyone except you. 2 years after humanity disappeared from the galaxy, the Galactic Council held its final meeting. The Great Hall that had once housed representatives from 47 different species now held fewer than 20. The rest had either withdrawn from the council or had been consumed by the chaos that followed humanity's departure. Chairman Vextel stood at his podium, his crystal body dim and cracked. The stress of watching galactic civilization collapse had taken its toll on him. His once bright colors had faded to dull gray, and his voice carried the weight of complete defeat. I call this session to order, he announced to the mostly empty hall, though I fear it may be our last. The reports that followed painted a picture of total disaster. The Void Swarm had consumed 31 star systems in the past year alone. Without human forces to hold the front lines, the insectoid monsters had swept through the outer rim like a plague. Entire worlds had been stripped bare, their populations either dead or fled to overcrowded refugee camps. Admiral Kethfer, his red scales now pale and scarred from recent battles, delivered the military report. We have lost contact with the 7th Fleet, he said, in a voice that sounded like he had given up hope. That leaves us with 18 operational warships to defend the entire galactic core. The Void Swarm now controls everything beyond the Cygnus sector. The economic news was just as bad. Trade Commissioner Yelison reported that interstellar commerce had collapsed completely. Without human cargo ships willing to fly dangerous routes, entire regions had been cut off from vital supplies. Famine was spreading through the mid-rim. Worlds and several colonies had already been abandoned. We have no choice but to retreat further, Yali-san explained. The remaining shipping companies refuse to service any system that requires traveling through contested space. We are losing the ability to feed our own people. But the worst news came from Tech Priest Zorlix. His mechanical body moved slower than before, and several of his systems had failed due to lack of replacement parts. Critical infrastructure continues to fail throughout Council space, he reported in his electronic voice. Without human engineers, we cannot maintain the systems that keep our worlds habitable. The list of failures was staggering. Atmospheric processors on 17 worlds had broken down, forcing mass evacuations. Orbital defense platforms were shutting down one by one as their complex systems failed. Even the Council's own communication network was unreliable, with long-range transmitters going offline every week. Dr. Neela, who had once been the Council's chief scientist, now looked like a broken woman. Her blue skin was pale, and her eyes showed the exhaustion of someone who had worked without rest for months trying to solve impossible problems. "I have tried to recreate human engineering solutions," she said quietly. "Our best minds from 12 different species have worked together, but we cannot replicate what they did. They understood technology in ways that we still do not comprehend." The meeting was interrupted by an urgent communication from the frontier. An automated message beacon had appeared in council space, broadcasting on all frequencies. The signal was definitely human in origin, but it was unlike anything they had received before. Chairman Vextel authorized the message to be played in the council chamber. A calm female voice filled the hall, speaking in perfect galactic standard language. "This is President Helen Murphy of the Terran Federation. I am speaking to you for the final time." Duh. The council members recognized the name. Human leader during their last years in the galactic community, she had been the one who had tried to negotiate for better treatment of human colonies and equal representation in council decisions. Requests had always been delayed by committees and bureaucratic procedures. "Well, we left your galaxy because we could no longer accept the role you had assigned to us," Helen's voice continued. "We were tired of being your soldiers, your workers, and your sacrifice. We were tired of dying for people who saw us as useful barbarians." The message paused, as if Helen was choosing her words carefully. "You probably expected us to fail out here in the darkness beyond your borders. You thought we would come crawling back, begging to be readmitted to your council. You believed we needed you more than you needed us." Images began to appear with the audio message. They showed massive space stations floating in the void between galaxies. The structures were enormous, dwarfing anything the Council had ever built. They glowed with power that came from technologies the Council had never seen. "We have built a new civilization out here," Helen said as the images continued. "A place where species work together as true equals, where the strong protect the weak without demanding subservience in return, where advancement comes from merit and contribution, not from political maneuvering and exploitation." The images showed fleets of ships that looked both familiar and alien. They had human design elements, but they incorporated technologies that seemed decades ahead of anything in Council space. The ships moved with precision and power that suggested capabilities far beyond what humanity had ever displayed before. "We were not the primitives you thought we were," Helen explained. "We simply chose not to reveal our true capabilities while we served as your expendable workforce. We hoped that loyalty and sacrifice would eventually earn us respect and equality. We were wrong." More images appeared, showing planets that had been transformed into beautiful worlds. Cities that combined the best of human and alien architecture stretched across continents. Forests and oceans teemed with life from dozens of different worlds, all living in careful balance. "We have found others out here," Helen continued. "Species that fled your galaxy for the same reasons we did. Peoples who were exploited, ignored, or abused by the powers that controlled civilized space. Together, we have built something better." Final images were the most shocking. They showed massive fleets of ships surrounding what looked like an artificial galaxy. Millions of worlds connected by streams of energy, all supporting life and civilization on a scale that made the old Galactic Council look tiny by comparison. "This is our new home," Helen said. "We call it the Free Galaxy. It is a place where every species has an equal voice, where dangerous tasks are shared fairly among volunteers, where resources are distributed based on need rather than political influence." The message began to fade, but Helen had one more thing to say. "We know your civilization is collapsing. We know the Void Swarm is consuming your worlds. We know your people are suffering, but we will not return to save you. You had 50 years to treat us as equals. You chose exploitation instead. Now you must face the consequences of that choice." The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber. In complete silence, Chairman Vextel looked around at the few remaining representatives. His crystal body was now completely gray, reflecting the despair that had settled over everyone present. "We have lost," he said simply. "It's not just the war against the Void Swarm, not just our economic stability, we have lost our souls, Ambassador." Kalari, one of the few original council members still present, spoke in a voice filled with regret. "We convinced ourselves we were civilizing them. We thought we were teaching them to be better than their violent nature. The truth is, they were already better than us. They saw our weakness, our prejudice, our willingness to sacrifice others for our own comfort, and they chose to leave rather than become what we were." The final session of the Galactic Council lasted only an hour. There were no dramatic speeches or formal declarations. The remaining members simply acknowledged that their government could no longer function and agreed to dissolve the council permanently as the representatives filed out of the Great Hall for the last time. They left behind the empty seats where the human delegation had once sat. The nameplate reading Terran Federation remained on the table, a monument to their greatest failure. Outside the council chambers, space was dark and full of dangers that no one was brave enough to face. The Void Swarm continued its advance toward the core worlds. Trade routes remained broken. Infrastructure continued to fail. But somewhere beyond the galactic rim, in the darkness between galaxies, humanity was building a new future. They had learned from the mistakes of the old galaxy and created something better. They had found a way to be strong without being cruel, to be protective without being exploitative. The galaxy they had left behind slowly descended into chaos and darkness. But the galaxy they had built was full of light and hope, and they would never look back.